blog. I'm your host and writer behind 99geek.ca, Andrew Geczy, as primarily a fiction writer releasing chapters of my books on in weekly chunks on my Patreon, like episodes of TV shows when I'm not trying to find a job and living in poverty, as I always am. I wanted my brand 99% Geek to offer more content that might keep people coming back. I don't have much to offer besides my writing, but I'm passionate about pop culture and try to keep myself as up to date on politics, science, and arts I can. Being a huge TV nerd, I run down the best shows of the week, go over all the major news headlines for people who've maybe gotten too tired to follow regular news, breaking it down and expanding it for people who might feel unable to follow along. And before anything else, I spotlight something cool and geeky for the week. Remember, you can follow along by going to patreon.com/99geek. This is Geekly Weekly number 87 for the week of Friday, February 26th. And this week's highlight is Moulin Rouge. Sorry for that sort of blah intro, but the intro is going to improve next week, I promise, because this is the last week of Phase 2 of 99% Geek. So starting at the beginning with Moulin Rouge. I don't know if you've ever seen Moulin Rouge. I don't think I've suggested this movie before. I might have a while ago, but it's now out on Disney Plus Star. So if you live in the US, then I'm not talking to you. I'm sorry. I think it's probably on Hulu then, because I believe everything that's on Star is stuff that's on Hulu. So if you live in the US, you're capable of getting something called the Hulu, this Disney Plus bundle or something, and it includes like Disney Plus, Hulu, and even ESPN Plus, so you can like watch sports and stuff if that's your thing. I've been kind of following hockey a little bit, and it's nice seeing the Canadian teams do well. So I mean, there's that, but yeah. But I mean, then the price is something like $11 $12 after tax or whatever. But I mean, so it's like for $12, you're getting all of that content. That seems pretty good deal. That's pretty much what we're getting here in Canada. For $11, we get Disney Plus Star, and that gives us all the Hulu content. It doesn't give us any sports stuff, and also Canadian dollars are worth less than American dollars. So $11 Canadian is like $15 or $16 US. So yeah, it's still a better deal in the US. So definitely take advantage of that. But as far as Moulin Rouge is concerned, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. I was going through the library, saw it sitting there, and I just clicked on it. Next thing I knew, half of my day was gone. I was just watching Moulin Rouge. Oops, what did I do? I made it go away. I was trying to fix something. Oh, there we go. It might be the movie that made me love musicals. It's a movie any musical lover can love, but I feel like it's a movie even people who don't like musicals can watch and be like, I get it. It's also one of the new titles, as I said, on Disney Plus Star. Unfortunately, it's not in delicious 4K with Dolby Vision, though. As some movies are. I was going through it, and the list of stuff that a lot of the stuff that's been added through Fox, like all the X-Men things and things like that, the things that are offered in 4K through Fox don't have Dolby Vision. They seem to have HDR10 instead, which is just a different format, and it's fine. And it works on my TV, which is nice. There was some warnings in some of the reviews for my TV that it's not compatible with other forms of HDR, but I think that was one of the earlier models of the TV. The current model worked just fine. It was great. I loved it. I checked out a couple 4K things from Fox. What did I check out again? I can't even remember now, but they had things like Die Hard was 4K, I remember, but only Die Hard 1, I believe. They had as I said, all the X-Men movies were Die Hard. Oh yeah, I think I checked out X-Men Apocalypse, is one of the movies I checked out to see what it looked like. It looked nice. The cool intro, opening credits. I love. That's probably my favorite thing about X-Men Apocalypse. I know a lot of people have issues with that movie. I don't think it's a great movie, but you gotta admit, it's got the best opening credits. With how it does the whole X-Men thing, but it's like the longest one, and it goes through all like the time periods and shit, and you're like, okay, that's pretty cool. Other than that, the movie's doesn't have much other. I feel like there is still some value in that movie. I like it more than other people do. Like I like the scene with Quicksilver when the mansion's exploding and he's getting everyone out of the building. I also like Cyclops in that movie. Surprisingly, like I know he's not the greatest character in any of the movies, but I feel like of all the movies, he gets his most justice in that movie, and he's not the worst. And Cyclops being my favorite character, my favorite X-Men anyway. I appreciated that of that movie, and even at the end of the movie, at the very end of the movie, for like 5 seconds, you see him in the 90s outfit. Like you see him fucking with the blue costume with the fucking thing on his thing, and I was just like, I lost my shit. It was so disappointing that we didn't get to see that in the next movie. Like, oh my God, that would have been amazing. Um, and yeah, so I actually don't all that much mind X-Men Apocalypse. I see where the issues are, and I feel honestly a lot of the movies have issues. Like even Days of the Future Past, when you get to the climax of the movie, it's a lot of like the action's kind of stilted, and you've got Wolverine fighting a Sentinel with bone claws, so he's not doing anything, and just getting thrown around, and there's just like it's not very dynamic, the action at the end, and that seems to be a going thing with a lot of the X-Men movies is the action's just never very that dynamic, like what you see in the MCU, um, which is disappointing. And so I mean, that's it. Just kind of took the weaknesses of the other movies that people were able to forgive, and then put them in the forefront with Apocalypse, and you're just like, and things just didn't work out the way you wanted it to. But anyway, somehow I started talking about Moulin Rouge and ended up talking about X-Men Apocalypse. Other things that were in 4K, Alien 1 is in 4K. But I noticed Aliens and Alien 3 and Alien 4 are not in 4K. Apparently, Disney did an announcement that they're going to do 4K remasters of those movies. What I'm hoping is that I noticed Aliens, for instance, is not the director's cut. That is an issue. There are other things like that, like Kingdom of Heaven is one movie that is there and is in 4K even. It's like, whoa, I would totally check that out. But it's a 2.5 hour version. I don't know if you've ever seen Kingdom of Heaven. I think I watched it once as a kid. It's one of those epic history movies, whatever. Like Troy. You know, like it came out around time where, you know, like that kind of time where I like Troy. Troy is one of the ones I actually enjoy. That was the one with Brad Pitt as Achilles, I think, and then he gets like at the end he gets killed in his Achilles heel. It's like my Achilles heel. It's like oh yeah, that'll do it. But yeah, what was I talking? Oh yeah, Kingdom of Heaven. The theatrical cut is known for being just god awful. That it cuts so much of the movie. I think the final movie's almost 4 hours or something like that. The actual director's cut. Now that one has like an epic, cool, long story that like is what you would expect from that, what you go to that kind of movie for, and then the theatrical cut just cuts all that out and just makes it a big jumbled mess. So why Disney Plus would only offer the theatrical cut is a real issue to me, and the fact that they're doing that as well with Aliens movies, like Aliens and Alien 3 are both movies that I believe improve a lot with their director's cuts, and especially with Alien 3. If they're not going to give the assembly cut of Alien 3, then what the fuck are you doing? And the weirdest part of all is that it seems like I believe Predator and Predator 2 are the director's cuts. Like they are the longer versions. At least they're the same length as the versions I have in my archives. So it really leaves me wondering like what the heck are they doing? Like make up your mind. Choose the best versions of your movies. I know that on Amazon Prime and other streaming services that have Batman versus Superman, those are almost always offered just a theatrical cut. It's like, what are you doing? People hated that cut of the movie. That's why people hate Zack Snyder is because of that cut of the movie. That cut of the movie like destroyed the DC universe as a whole, and you're still shoving it in people's faces and making them people who don't know better just to watch that one first. Like you should be putting that director's cut in everyone's face. Only the ultimate cut should be the only thing people ever see of Batman v Superman. I don't know why after better cuts of movies are released that people still try to push those original cuts on people, and it's just you're just setting yourself up to fail. Like why not push the best version of yourself forward at all times? Anyway, I think I've talked enough about the geeky highlight of the week. Don't worry, there's not a lot of news this week, so when we get there, it'll be shorter. Moving on from there to the Geekly Weekly TV rankings, starting at the bottom. If you're a video watcher, then you already just saw me scroll through everything and know what's coming. But starting at the bottom with Black Lightning at number 9. I gave it 2 stars, Black Lightning, worst show of the week, but it's still holding on somehow. It was par for the course for this show. Barely keeping my attention. Honestly, I found the most compelling stuff this week from Jefferson, which is weird because he's one of my least favorite characters. But he had a weird arc this episode, almost having a seeming epiphany at one point, only to find his wife with Tobias at the end of the episode. Probably assumed they were having an affair, and now it's back to status quo emo Jeff. Anissa's girlfriend is awake, though I thought I remembered her waking at the end of a previous episode, so okay. And then they got married, which must have been very overwhelming for someone who was in a coma for a year. And Jen has been nothing but confusing all season. and I just have no idea what to make of her. It's a long ways off from becoming from where she was last season, where she was my favorite character. Now I just can't even connect with her at all over the place. But that's Black Lightning. Like, whatever. I'm still watching it, even though I'm not really that connected, just because I stay connected to the DC universe. So thank God this is the last season, though. I'm not all that excited about. They keep talking about a spinoff with Painkiller, who hasn't even been in this season. I don't know what that's going to be all about, but I don't really care about that. I'll watch it, but it sounds worse than the Green Arrow and the Canaries that they canceled after one episode. Moving on from there, American Gods at 2 stars is at number 8 on the list. Another fine, not great episode of the show, but at least it was better than Black Lightning. This one particularly left me bored. Not that anything bad happened, but I care so little for the characters that just seem to drag on and on and on. And when Demeter did her disappearing number at the end, I was like, look at how beautiful that looks in the music, and they really want to evoke an emotion. That's nice. What an emotion that they were trying to evoke. But I didn't feel the emotion. Laura and Shadow having their meeting was fine and ended on a good note, but was overall anticlimactic. I'm just glad she didn't ruin things with him and his landlord. I kind of like their weird little flirty romancy thing going on, and it seems cool that Laura's kind of moved on and is more interested in the leprechaun dude, uh, whatever his name is. If you Also, it was nice seeing Danny Trejo as Mr. World. If you remember me saying before that bringing back Crispin Glover was a bad idea, unless he just keeps shifting, because it was like, why did he shift to the other character for a little bit, and now he's just back to Crispin Glover as if nothing happened? But so he's still shifting, and he shifted to Danny Trejo this week, and was just Danny Trejo all week for no reason. It was like, all right, you know what? At least it's keeping it consistent. If it was just back to Crispin Glover and nothing, then fine. Then I would have been like, what the hell? But that kind of keeps it consistent. The fact that now he's Danny Trejo, and Danny Trejo made it fun this week, so I kind of enjoyed it. In the hindsight, it works better. Moving on from there to number 7 on the list, The Equalizer with 3 stars. So this one was actually decent. I feel like some of the Queen Latifah novelty is wearing off. I found myself a little bored the moment I started the show, and my attention definitely wavered at multiple points. I don't know if now that the novelty is wearing off, the show has the staying power for me to stick with it. I thought the story they were telling was fine, and I liked the scene at the end with the judge. It wasn't a bad episode. It was fine. It was absolutely fine. Might have even given it 2.5 stars, I think, if it wasn't the story of the week wasn't in it self-containedly compelling. So if that made any sense. Certainly not grammatically, but it's not like I'm a writer or something. Moving on from there, number 6 on the list. Are You Afraid of the Dark? 3.5 stars. This was a good second episode, but I feel like it took a couple steps back from the strength of the premiere. For starters, there were more allusions to protagonists being gay without any confirmation for the entire episode. And then they added a couple allusions that he isn't gay. There's a flirty scene with the redheaded girl in the show, and another scene where he's embarrassed to wear women's PJs. Like the girl brings some PJs, and the top has like "girl power" written on it, and his friends are like, "You're wearing funny clothes," and he's all like, "Shucks, I'm all manly. Just ignore that I'm wearing this, and I'm a man." It's like, what's going on here? I'm gonna be super disappointed if he's not gay, especially since then it wouldn't make any sense why he refuses to tell his friends about Connor, the guy missing, and his nighttime rendezvous plans. Like, if they were gonna hang out at midnight or whatever, but it was platonic, then why hide it? What were they going to do alone in the lighthouse anyway, if not make out? If they're really just hiding the gay reveal, it feels wrong to make it a reveal, like it would ratchet up the dramatic tension. He cares so much because he's trying to find the love of his life, you know? Like, this whole show so far has been him being like, this guy's missing, we gotta find him, something's wrong. And everybody else is like, relax, he's probably just like ran away from home or something, or he's hiding in his favorite treehouse or something like that. And then the main character's like, no, I know there's something wrong. And they're like, why are you so worried about him, man? It's like, no reason. It's like, dude, you're in love with him, just admit it. You have a freaking picture on your bedside table where you're embracing him, and that was one of the first things they showed in the pilot of this season. You're gay. Why is the show either not wanting to, like, they considered that plot point and are deciding not to go down that path, or B, they're making it some kind of secret reveal, but like, why would you make that a reveal when it could be propelling the dramatic tension in the show? Just doesn't make sense. It almost feels like the show is going to make him gay and they just waffle. And if that's true, I'm just super disappointed. And that's not the only disappointing thing in this episode either. When they were fighting the monster at the end of the episode, he lives in the dark or whatever, and then he pops out and goes blah. And so at the end, they realize that light can hurt him, so they're all standing in a circle with their flashlights out, and it's pretty much like a video game where he just like pops up and goes blah, and then they point the light at him, and he's like ah, and then he like disappears into the shadows, and then like goes to another part of the room, and then jumps up and goes blah, and then they point the light at him, and he goes ah. And then he disappears and goes to another part of the room and then pops up and blah, and then they point the light at him and he goes blah, and just like cowers away. And every time he just looks like a dude in a costume, and it looked so cheesy and so ridiculous and so lame. They destroyed all of their like horror and tension that they built up over the first episode. It was really pathetic. So a show that was super strong in this pilot, I think I gave it like 4.5 stars, something like that, definitely dropped in quality this week, and that's too bad. They still have plenty of time to write things, and even though it dropped in quality, it was still plenty entertaining, and I was still plenty engaged throughout the episode. So I still think it was a pretty good episode. It just is certainly not going in the directions I was hoping it would. Moving on from there, that was Are You Afraid of the Dark? Remember that's season 2, so you can always find season 1, and that was interesting, or go back and find the 90s version, which is probably a lot better. Moving on from there to number 5 on the list, The Goldbergs with 4 stars. Everything else this week was pretty great. This was an enjoyable episode this week, with Adam actually being the center of the story for once. Not that anyone's arc got advanced at all, really, but there was some great moments of comedy between Adam and Beverly and his siblings. It's not that it really matters that he was the center of the arc. I know generally I prefer a lot of the side characters more than Adam. It's just nice to see the main character actually be the center of the story every once in a while. I don't know. My favorite scene was when they all had old timey cell phones and they were talking to each other on their like 80s cell phones, massive freaking 80s cell phones in the middle of the freaking high school. He's talking on his phone and everyone's like getting all in his face, like, oh, you're acting all like high class now, and you're and all messed up, and you got these phones, and then his brother and sister just show up in the high school for no reason whatsoever with their own phones. And they're all just like, just ignore them. They don't have cell phones. They walk off with the cell phones, and the mom joined them also with their phone. Everybody's got their phones, and it's just ridiculous. It's all happening in his high school randomly. When the show gets ridiculous like that, that's usually when it's at its best. It almost sometimes feels like I often describe the best jokes in the show as if they're Family Guy cutaways, as if like the show has the same sort of comedy as Family Guy, but it's doing it in live action, which is weird and cool, I guess. I guess New Girl was the same way. Like New Girl was all about its cutaways and things like that as well. It's a comedy thing that's been going on for a while. That's never just been Family Guy's thing. But yeah, this episode, maybe not important, certainly hit about as high as the show can reach these days. So I enjoyed it. Number 5 on the list, 4 stars. Next on the list was Saturday Night Live, also 4 stars. I enjoyed this week's episode of Saturday Night Live. The sketches felt more consistently good than they were the past few weeks, with some standouts, but really most of the sketches had moments that had me rolling with laughter. That sentence didn't make sense. There were some standouts, but really so even the ones that weren't standouts still had me rolling with laughter, is what I think I'm trying to say. I didn't know much about the host, but I thought he did a pretty good job. I maybe didn't love the cold open, but it ended up being stronger than I expected from the premise and the final sketch. I think, oh yeah, and the final sketch was I think it was a digital sketch, which is weird, but it was well done. As I said, this week was more consistent at most. That was probably the best thing you can say about it, is that it was far more consistent. Even if it perhaps was still weak in some other ways, the consistency helps a lot. And it may have been a weak 4 stars, but it's still a 4 star, and that's an improvement nonetheless. Moving on. I can't even remember, like it's been so long ago since but I do remember I didn't know the host very well, but I thought he did a good job of just kind of taking advantage of what he does well. And yeah, I thought they just did a good job this week. I even saw when I've got like an app that keeps track of the shows I watch and has a community of people that comment on things and stuff, and everyone seemed to be agreeing that Saturday Night Live this week was better than it's been lately. So yeah, go Saturday Night Live. Well done. Moving on from there, number to the top three. Bum, 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 with Batwoman at number three. 4 stars is what I gave Batwoman. There was a lot of 4-star shows this week. It was a decent episode of Batwoman. It didn't do anything super standout, but it did continue the strong threads of the previous episode that had me rated so high. I'm enjoying the characters, especially the team of Luke and Mary. Batwoman's drama can be a little frustrating, but it's interesting seeing a different sort of tension between her and her team. We don't usually see that kind of tension from these shows. Like, what I think it's like almost like the power dynamic is reversed because usually it's the superhero and then like in Spider-Man, there's the guy in the chair, the guy at the computer, the guy who's in his ear, the superhero's ear. But like the superhero is always the one that's in charge, right? Like it's always like, if I don't like what you're saying, I can turn you off, or if I don't like what you're saying, you're fired. Like I don't need you. You're helping me, but if necessary, I can do this without you. But in the case of Batwoman, it's different because it's Luke and Mary who were the team, and then Batwoman disappeared, and now the Batwoman's like different and is on probation, so to speak, and answers to them instead of them answering to her. And there was a bit of she pushed against that this episode. It was kind of like, look, I'm the one putting myself at risk. You guys have to stop controlling me and like being so combative with me and like listen to me every once in a while. So she is pushing against that dynamic, but I think it was kind of cool for a while to see the superhero not be the one that was in charge. Um, Also, Alice is as fun as always. Though I think a lot of people were hoping she would be as gay as every other woman on the show, especially since she gives off the most gay vibes of anyone. But I guess we got confirmation this week that she's straight, which is fine. This guy she's flirting with seems interesting. By flirting, I mean she tried to kill him, and now he has her tied to a chair. But that's love. Um, yeah, it feels different somewhat, and I like how he's just. Oh no, I jumped to the next thing. I also enjoyed the villain this week. It was a gay guy, and that felt different. I liked like he was like a flamboyantly gay guy, and I liked how he wasn't like evil, but like he was just sort of amoral and selfish in that sort of flamboyant gay guy way where it's all about him and what he wants for himself and things like that. And so then it turns out he's really a costume vigilante who's trying to steal art, and it was just cool and interesting. And his fight scene was cool. He was all nimbly and jumping around and being cool. I did think that they were exaggerating about the excessive force. At the end, he runs away from Batwoman and gets hit by a car, and they're like, Why did you hit him with a car?" It was a police guy, police in quotations, because the police in Gotham are privately run. It's weird in this show, but yeah, it was a police guy that hit him with a car, and then everybody's like, "Well, that's excessive force." At the end of the episode, they're like, "We fired him because what he did was wrong." It's like, wait, this guy is stealing art. He specifically didn't surrender when they told him to freeze. Like he's running away. So he's fought Batwoman and won. Like he beat the crap out of her and escaped. So at this point, is lethal force not necessary? Like I would think that hitting him with a car would be a normal. Like even Batman, I feel like if hitting him with the Batmobile was an option Batman had, he would have taken it at that point. I don't feel like that was. This guy knew what he was getting into. It's not like he was an innocent dude walking down the sidewalk. He knew what he was getting into when he chose to become an art thief right in front of all those people and take on Batwoman. He knew he was going to like probably, like you're putting your life at risk at that point, and then you have only yourself to blame if the police accidentally hit you with their car trying to um, take you down. I really don't think. Yeah, I get that they're trying to relate it to like the excessive force being used on people of color in the real world. I don't think that those are one to one, especially because this guy was white as can be. But okay, moving on. Number two on the list, Superman and Lois, 4 stars. Another CW show. CW shows doing pretty good this week. Well, that's not true. Black Lightning was at the very bottom of the list. But Superman and Lois was good. This was a strong pilot, and clearly a good chunk of money was put behind it, especially the opening scene with the nuclear power plant. That was pretty to watch. I like the two kids, and I like the girl they're crushing on. It's sad that her mother Lana has kind of a douchebag husband, and definitely the way the girl acts makes it seem like, yeah, probably that husband's a total douchebag. Like it's not just him being an asshole to Clark. I feel like he's probably an asshole to his family too. I hate that Lana is always one that has to suffer in like every story about her ever. You know, like she never gets a happy ending, and that's sad. Did she really need a shitty husband too? I say no. I also thought it was weird some of the ways the show doesn't quite fit with the rest of the Arrowverse. I accidentally wrote does because I often have issues with doing positive instead of negative, negative instead of positive. But yeah, it doesn't really fit in with the Arrowverse at all. Like there were numerous um, details in the show that just contradicted things that were commonly known about the Arrowverse and commonly known about these characters within the Arrowverse. I don't understand why they spent so much time in the crossovers setting this show up. And then they just took all of that setup that they had and just threw it in the garbage and were like, we're going to do something different. It's like, but you do still exist in the Arrowverse, right? Like, okay, you had those kids a year ago and now they're 18 or 16 or something. Like, what the fuck is going on here? Are we in the future? Why is Lex Luthor played by a totally different actor? Why does nothing work the way it's supposed to? Just it's just weird. It is really really weird. Is all I'm gonna say, and it doesn't make much sense. Oh, and somebody else was pointing out that the situation with kryptonite right now in the Arrowverse is one thing, but then kryptonite in Superman and Lois, I guess, is just something totally different because people have kryptonite and it's just whatever. It's very contradictory. What's going on between Superman and Lois and the rest of the Arrowverse, which makes it seem like Superman and Lois isn't connected to the Arrowverse. But then again, why would they set it up in the crossovers then? Why did they hit the reset button? And we're just like, forget all that. I don't get it. But other than that, it was strong on its own, even though it didn't do much to connect to the wider universe. Moving on to the number one spot, of course, if anyone had any doubt, this is also going to be the first thing I do once I get off of this. I will be watching WandaVision. WandaVision last week, 5 stars, fantastic. The episode was amazing, super engaging, combining favorite characters in a weird, fun ways. I loved seeing Darcy hanging out with Vision. That was just the funnest. I love the comedy. I felt this was the most legitimately funny episode. Like even when it was just focusing on the sitcom parts, like there was plenty of stuff outside the sitcom mechanics to enjoy in this episode. But there were moments like with Captain Marvel where it was very much they kind of did a Modern Family sort of like they're making fun of Modern Family this episode, and I felt like the jokes and things were actually legitimately funny. Like I was actually laughing as if I was watching Modern Family, and that was something I feel like some of the other sitcom parodies didn't do as good a job as. But this one, it was like I actually wanted more of the Modern Family stuff because it was fun. Just the way that she was dealing with everything falling apart, it was actually really entertaining, and I was having a blast. But then that was only like half of the episode, and the rest of the episode was like tons of beyond the veil moments and people waking up and things and the story just turning and super fast now. And then that scene at the end with Agatha where they do this song and it's become a really popular song now. It's all been memed already and it's all over the internet. But that song they do, it just especially when you weren't expecting it. Like I had heard theories about Agnes being Agatha Harkness, and I don't really know much about Agatha Harkness. But definitely when the dog died and she was just holding the dog in her hands, I was like, so she totally killed that dog, right? By that time, I'd already kind of heard some of the rumors about Agnes, and then I thought, it's like, so that's obvious. But then it comes back up in the song where they go through all the ways that she's been manipulating everyone the whole time, and then at the very end, oh, and she killed Sparky too. Then she just laughs, and it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. I just lost it. That was so fucking great. The show is just so fucking great. Easily, this was the best episode of a great season so far. I can't wait for the episode that's waiting for me right now. I'm gonna definitely go check that out as soon as this is done. WandaVision is the best show. If you're not watching it, you should be watching it. It's great. I love it. Even the post credit with Snooper's gonna snoop, Evan Peters. I can't wait to see what's up with that. I have a theory that he's probably being controlled by Agnes. We're gonna probably have a fight scene between him and Monica while Wanda and Agnes does whatever, which is exciting. Um, I will say that I hope that Evan Peters somehow makes it to the end of the show, still involved. Like, not that he doesn't disappear or whatever at the end of the show or whatever. I'm hoping he sticks around because I love Evan Peters. I would love to see what happens to that character. I would love to see more of Quicksilver. I just God, Marvel's great right now, and I mean they're great always. But like, if you're not watching the show, you're crazy. What are you doing listening to this podcast if you're not watching the show? I'm telling you. So yeah, that's the Geekly Weekly TV rankings. I hope you enjoyed some of those shows. I hope you watched and enjoyed some of those shows. And if not, I would say at least watch the top five. Yeah, I don't know about Are You Afraid of the Dark? Maybe top six. You could probably skip The Equalizer, American Gods, and Black Lightning. I probably even could have skipped them too. Moving on from there to Geekly predictions, there are a lot of predictions this week. A lot of things coming out, and I went back and forth whether or not I should just keep it to the top ones. And I was like, you know what? Nah. Um, there's going to be no limit on how many predictions there can be. If it's a busy week, it's a busy week. And so this week is going to be a busy week coming up. We have The Walking Dead coming out on Sunday on AMC. Technically, it's already out for people if you are a subscriber to AMC Plus, or if you're just a filthy pirate, then you can totally watch it early. I considered doing that, but the first episode came out a week early. Apparently, the subsequent episode is going to be coming out just a couple days early. And I just figured, for the sake of keeping it consistent with the TV rankings, that I would save it for the week it airs for the most people, and then I would post it there. And yeah, so it will be reviewed next week. The Walking Dead, and so that's coming on Sunday. It's very exciting. It's coming back. Who are you most excited for? Me personally is Judith. I love Judith. She's great. She's a badass. She's as Daryl calls her, she's an ass kicker. I look forward to seeing her grow up with the show. Like, I definitely don't want any more time jumps. I just want to see Judith grow up. I want to follow it, um, and I want her to be an ass kicker, and it would be awesome, and it would feel like we all kind of watched her grow up and helped raise her in a way, helped raise her to be a zombie killing badass, and that would feel pretty great. Besides that, I'm sure there's other great stuff going on the show, but who cares? Judith. Moving on from there, number two, Debris is a new show coming to NBC on Monday. I didn't know much about it. I had seen some of the trailers where it's like something's coming down the sky, it's like a meteor, and they're like, oh, stuff. And it's like, all right, so it must be some kind of disaster thing. No, it's not a disaster thing. Apparently, watching the trailer that's here now, you can click on it and watch it yourself. I can click on it and watch it. And you can watch me watch it and be like, whoa, he's watching it. Hopefully that mute button just, yes, it's fine. But yeah, apparently it's like Fringe is what it seems. And there's weird science anomalies, and they're like, wow, these are weird. And they, whereas Fringe was focused on multiple universes and weird scientific events that happen because of multiple universes, this one seems more focused on aliens. So like an alien ship explodes above the Earth and drops debris everywhere, and then the debris causes weird scientific events to happen. And so these people who are like the Fringe people have to show up and figure out the scientific events. So it's like a new Fringe. And if you like Fringe, this might scratch that itch. It might not. It might feel like a plain ripoff. I don't know yet. I was somewhat impressed by the trailer. I thought it looked cool. I'm interested to see where it goes. I'm going to actually check it out. That's Debris on NBC on Monday. Moving on from there to The Flash on the CW Tuesday. As you know, I'm a huge comic book nerd. So obviously I'm super excited for The Flash to return. It hasn't been at its best lately, and last season ended in a weird spot because it ended an episode before the finale. They couldn't film the finale in time before the pandemic. So the season ended super anticlimactically, and now they have to resolve what happened last season in the beginning of this season. which is interesting. And the question, of course, will be, is that going to just be all in the pilot, or is it going to take them more than one episode to resolve? And then what are they going to do after that? And where are we going? And it doesn't leave me all that enthused, but I have not given up on The Flash. I still don't even think it's the weakest of the shows when you got Black Lightning just thinking up the field left and right and other things. And I mean, even Batwoman's not super strong all the time. But certainly I trust that they could go somewhere awesome with the Flash and that they might have awesome things planned. Um, I am hoping that they resolve this arc and move on to a new arc because this arc has not been its best arc. But even then, I'm just excited to see the characters again, and every time I watch the trailer and you see Harrison be like, "Run, Barry, run!" I'm like, "Yes, Barry, fucking run! Just do it." He's running out of speed, so I'm guessing they're gonna figure out something to get his speed back, and I'm excited for that because he's gotta run. He's Barry Allen. He runs. That's what he does. All right? Do you get it? All right. Moving on. Number 4 on the list, Cherry, is a movie that is coming to Apple Plus, and I did not put the day that that is happening because I am shitty like that. It is coming. It doesn't say because life sucks. Cherry release date. You can go to patreon.com/99geek and click on the link for the trailer and then pause this and watch the trailer because it was I was impressed by it. It was better than I was expecting it to be, especially because it seems to be getting somewhat mediocre ratings and people are sort of saying it's whatever. But I watched the trailer and I thought it looked alright, so it might be worth checking out. It looks like a great performance by Tom Holland, who is Spider-Man. So yeah, check that out. That's Cherry on Apple Plus. That's a lot of good things seeming to be coming to Apple Plus lately. I know they have a small library. I recently, what was it? There was, for some reason, there was something that was supposed to be on CBS All Access becoming Paramount Plus. And I decided, you know what, maybe I'll give their free trial a try and see what's on CBS All Access. And then when it gets turned into Paramount Plus, I'll get that free of charge, that upgrade or whatever. Turns out in Canada, CBS All Access has nothing. Like maybe 30 things total on the whole streaming service. That's $6 streaming a month streaming service. Like there's no Star Trek. That's all on Crave, I guess. There's no a stand, I think, isn't even on there. Like all the things you would expect to be on CBS All Access that's usually on CBS All Access somehow just isn't there. And I read a news thing that not going to be coming out like when it switches to Paramount Plus, a lot of different regions will be getting more content, and Canada will not be one of those regions. Apparently, they will be getting new content, but not right away. It's going to take some time. It's like, but there's already nothing. So you're going to switch to this new Paramount Plus thing, new branding, new price and everything, but you're not adding anything to the library that is tiny, minuscule, and blows my mind. I cannot believe how bad CBS All Access or otherwise Paramount Plus is in Canada. It is mind-blowingly bad. I canceled before it charged me anything. I was like, nope, no, thank you. This is dumb. Thank you for the free trial though. Didn't even have the show I was looking for that it claimed to have. Like when I did a search for it on Google, it was like, yeah, no, this is you'll find it on CBS All Access. I'm like, okay, fine. I'd rather watch it in beautiful HD. It's see CBS All Access, give it a try. But no, it didn't even have that show that the website claimed to have. So thanks, CBS All Access. You're the worst. But Apple Plus, the reason why I was bringing up CBS All Access is because Apple Plus, I think, is somewhat similar in the sense that they have just a small library. The only thing they have is stuff that they're kind of making themselves. But I'm impressed at how fast they're adding to that library, and the stuff they're adding seems to be real quality. The For All Mankind that I mentioned before isn't even the best thing apparently on their service. Apparently there is a comedy called Mystic Quest that's really good. So I've heard, I haven't watched it or anything. I haven't watched anything from Apple Plus, but it really makes it sound that, and all of this stuff is being offered in 4K HDR. It really makes it feel like maybe Apple Plus is probably more worth checking out than CBS All Access, at least if you live in Canada. And probably more than like AMC Plus, where I imagine the selection of offerings they have is pretty low as well. But you get early Walking Dead, and you don't get that from Apple Plus, so there you go. Moving on from there, Pacific Rim, The Black, coming to Netflix on Thursday. I had very little interest in this until I watched the trailer, and I was like, this doesn't look that bad, actually. It's animated, sort of 3D anime style. I've never been a huge fan of Pacific Rim, the movies. I felt the first movie was kind of weak, especially because they just, almost the whole movie is people yelling at that poor Asian girl, "Watch out, Mako! What are you doing, Mako? Don't go there, Mako! It's coming, Mako!" Like, stop saying her name. Pronouns are your friend. Christ. Um, so yeah, but this version of Pacific Rim looked interesting and different. It follows like two kids that are stuck in a abandoned city or whatever, that's overrun by monsters, and then they come across a robot suit in a secret underground facility that I guess was abandoned. And they're like, we can totally use this robot suit to kick monster ass. Yeah. And then they go and find some Asian girl and scream at her, Mako! The monsters are coming, Mako! You had this, Mako! I believe in you, Mako! Anyway. Mako! I'm telling you, rewatch that movie and pay attention to how many times people say her name. It is an abnormal amount of times. It is everyone in the movie. It's like her dad, her friend, the random people she comes across. It's just like, oh my god, stop. And then they just kill her in the second. Well, that's probably a spoiler, but her character is not done justice in the second movie either. But at least they don't scream her name at her 20 times. Next thing on the list was Tom and Jerry is coming out. This is coming out in theaters and HBO on February 26th. It looks fine. I actually kind of enjoy the trailer. It seems silly and funny, and I like Chloe Grace Moretz. I've always liked Chloe Grace Moretz. And her being in a role where she's acting like an adultish is kind of cool. And holding up the movie on her own, basically. I mean, it's her and a bunch of animated characters and other people working around her and stuff, but it's like basically her. So I mean, I think that's cool and that's a cool idea. And it, I've never been a huge fan of Tom and Jerry. I find it cruel. Like, I feel like the mouse is cruel to the cat, and it's weird that that show often has you sympathizing with the cat, but he doesn't. He's just trying to do what cats do, and this poor mouse is torturing him over and over again. It's horrible. I hate it. So I will probably hate the movie, but if that's your thing, it doesn't actually look that bad. Last on the list, Punky Brewster is coming to Peacock. That's something I don't even think is offered in Canada. And that's coming out yesterday, actually, the 25th, I think. So, oops, probably should have been on last week, but I mean, who cares? It's Punky Brewster. I never watched the original. I believe the original is sort of um, like it was a precursor to kidcoms that I've been sort of really into kidcoms lately. I've talked about it repeatedly, and I was thinking about maybe bringing it up again next week in the blog, or maybe the highlight. We'll see. But this, I think Punky Brewster was like a pre-kidcom sort of thing, or like pre-Lizzie McGuire, pre iCarly, pre Hannah Montana. Back in the 80s, it was Punky Brewster, some kid who does stuff. I don't. Is this the one where she has powers, or is that a different one? I don't know. But I never watched it. But it was popular, I guess, for the time. It's well known. And now they're making remaking the same sort of style, like they tried to do and failed to do with Lizzie McGuire, like they did with Boy Meets World, with Girl Meets World. Like they're trying to do with iCarly, like they're doing with a bunch of other things. They're trying to bring back Punky Brewster with the original actress, and now she's all grown up and she um adopts a different girl, I guess. I don't know. But if that's your thing and you have Peacock and you want to watch some Punky Brewster, that's there. Honestly, the predictions is more about letting you know what people will be talking about for the next week, so so you're up to date, and then you can be there and be like, oh. So I mean, surely someone somewhere will be talking about Punky Brewster in the next week, and if you want to show up there beside the water cooler and be like, yeah, I heard about Punky Brewster, then there you go. I've told you everything you need to know. It's yeah. Moving on from there. Geekly news headlines. The news from the past week that you need to know right here, right now. So let's enjoy that. Not a lot of news this week, which is great in my opinion. There was like things and opinions and ways and stuff, but I feel like there was nothing really newsworthy that I needed to waste your time with. But starting at the top, QAnon thinks Biden helped China create the Texas energy crisis. Let's see what that's about. That's on vice.com for February 19th, 2021. So they wrote the date backwards like they like to do. This is by David Gilbert. As if Texans didn't have enough to deal with between energy blackouts, broken water pipes, food shortages, and their elected officials lying about Cancun holidays in the middle of the crisis, QAnon followers are now actively trying to claim that the winter storm was orchestrated by the Biden administration with the help of China. In what way? How does that make what? Huh? What? Like, like China has a mutant program and they created Storm, and then we hired Storm from China to come and create the storm. Goddess, give me powers! Create winter storm over Texas! When QAnon followers jump on any major global incident and try to interpret it through their unique worldview, there are usually several conspiracies in play, but one appears to be dominating the forums and channels, thanks mainly to a major Q influencer who goes by the name of Inevitable ET. The basic outline of the theory is that President Joe Biden allowed China access to the US power grid when he signed the Keystone Pipeline Executive Order, and by doing so, somehow allowed China to hack the US power grid and cause the blackouts that Texas has suffered over the last week. Of course, this theory, which has no basis in fact, fails to mention that Texas's power grid is operated and maintained by Texas, and not part of the two majorly federally controlled power grids that service every other state in the country. But such facts matter little to Telegram, Gab, and the QAnon forum, greatawakenings.win, where people share the conspiracy with comments like I believe it and solid research. Yes, well. Apparently you guys are great judges on such things. Over on the QAnon casualties thread on Reddit, which offers advice and help to people whose families and friends have been indoctrinated into QAnon. Oh, that's nice. Multiple users in Texas reported that loved ones had begun to share the specific Biden theory while they all suffered through freezing temperatures and water shortages. I am in the currently frozen state of Texas. My Q people have now decided, based on a questionable article they have cited, that our polar storm this week is a result of some kind of weather warfare. So it's true. What? Set in motion by the current administration, one user wrote. That's wonderful. Is this the proof that I was trying to read a thing and wasting your time with dead air as I was doing it. Because this person posted this thing, get this out ASAP. Texas, something is not sitting right with me, Texas, and it's not just the weather. I mean, it really bothers me. These millions of Texas families, they keep repeating Texas, are suffering. I couldn't sleep actually, so I woke up this morning, made coffee, got to researching. I started pulling Biden's EOs this morning, and I found something buried in the Keystone Pipeline EO. Man, it's storming outside. There's snow everywhere. I need to research what could cause snow. Let me check the oil Keystone Pipeline paperwork. That's sure to tell me something. It turns out that the same day Biden shut down the Keystone Pipeline, he also lifted the security on our power grid for 90 days. Trump's EO the year prior secured our power grid by giving China no access. For the record, Texas's power grid is separate from the power grid of the rest of the country. So your research is instantly off the mark completely. And these people were like, good research. Turns out we have had 0 transformers in this country that were manufactured in China prior to 2009. China has made blah, 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 blah. I don't know what all that, blah, 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 blah. People crazy. Anyway, that was me trying to go down that rabbit hole. But although the Biden, this is back to me in the original article, but although the Biden-China conspiracy has dominated the message boards, it's not the only Texas conspiracy out there. Others reported that the QAnon people in their lives had been sharing a baseless claim that the snow that had fallen in Texas was somehow not real snow. Where do these people come up with this stuff? Others are pushing the idea that the Texas blackout may be the storm that Q has been referring to since the beginning, an event that will finally unmask the cabal of Democratic pedophiles and allow Trump to ascend the presidency once again. On greatawakenings.win, One user pointed out that pro-Trump QAnon supporter lawyer Lynn Wood, who has huge influence within the QAnon community, warned about a coming storm before the inauguration and told followers to stock up on supplies because there would be power outages. But while his Q supporters are lauding him for his foresight, Wood himself, who is facing an investigation into his professional conduct as a lawyer in Georgia, has denounced QAnon, sort of. On his Telegram channel, which has over 800,000 followers, Wood wrote on Thursday night, I have been repeatedly accused of being a QAnon conspiracy theorist by the enemy. I have never exactly understood why the propaganda media decided to make that accusation against me. Besides the other thing the other quote of yours we just read. We didn't, I guess it wasn't a direct quote, but about the coming storm for the inauguration. And oh my God, insane. Wood quickly followed that statement by outlining just one of the many reasons why he has been correctly labeled a QAnon booster. So, wait, what? Referring WWG1WGA, which is one of the best known terms used by QAnon supporters to identify themselves. On Twitter, I did have on my profile WWG1WGA. I probably adopted that statement, where we go one, we go all. To me, it conveyed unity, which is a QAnon thing. I posted it after I saw Lieutenant General Mike Flynn and his family take that pledge. I love and admire General Flynn. He loves liberty and God, so do I. QAnon isn't the only group spreading misinformation about the Texas winter storm. Earlier this week, Republican lawmakers did their best to lay the blame for the energy blackouts on renewable energy by using a 7-year-old picture of frozen wind turbines taken in Sweden. Unsurprisingly, yes, that's true. Apparently, the picture going around of frozen turbines people have been using was actually 7 years old from Sweden. Unsurprisingly, among the lawmakers spreading this disinformation were Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene, of course. Both have a history of boosting QAnon, just like this guy who's insisting that he has nothing to do with QAnon. Wonderful. It's amazing how these people put it out, like they're so blatant and out front with it, but then gaslight us and pretend like it didn't happen like days later and like, no, that never happened. We aren't like that. You just made it up and now you're false news and what the fuck. It's like with the insurrection, how everybody was all like, yeah, we're taking it for Trump, yeah, fucking QAnon, yeah, Proud Boys, yeah. And then the moment, like, it turned out it was all evil and it turned out that people were getting arrested for it, suddenly it's, oh, it was all run by Antifa. It was the liberals pretending to be us, and they were the ones that did it all. And it's like, stop fucking God, it's bad enough that you guys are evil as fuck, but then you gaslight and pretend that we're the ones doing it. And it's just, but it's out. We're seeing it with our blatant eyes. And millions of people are believing you. It's just so frustrating. Moving on. Trump's taxes are finally going to New York prosecutors, and pray to God that he spends many years in prison. I was going to say something worse, but I'm not. Let's just move on. Greg Walters, Vice.com, February 22nd. The Supreme Court just put an end to years of battling over the financial documents. Former President Trump's tax returns and other records are finally on their way to New York prosecutors. The Supreme Court formally declined to hear Trump's case against turning over piles of financial documents to the Manhattan District Attorney Kai Vance, ending months of unexplained delay with a terse statement on Monday morning. The decision means prosecutors' lengthy battle to pry open Trump's financial world has finally succeeded and clears the way for the investigation of Trump's business affairs to proceed. Moments after the decision came down, Vance issued a 3-word statement: the work continues. Trump slammed the investigation as a politically motivated witch hunt in a statement shortly after the Supreme Court's decision was announced. For more than 2 years, New York City has been looking at almost every transaction I've ever done, including seeking tax returns, which were done by among the biggest and most prestigious law and accounting firms in the U.S., Trump said. This is something which has never happened to president before. It is all Democrat inspired in a totally Democrat location, New York City and state. Even if the files are immediately turned over to New York prosecutors, however, they'll still be kept confidential under grand jury secrecy rules, meaning the general public won't be able to have a look at them unless a criminal case is actually brought against the former president, his company, his family members, or associates. And keep in mind, he somehow managed to avoid any accountability this whole time, so there's no guarantee that anything will come of this, but let's hope. Fingers crossed. Trump successfully delayed Vance's attempt to get a look at the inner workings of his business and personal finances until after he stepped down from the presidency, even though Trump eventually lost every legal battle he fought to keep the documents secret. But the justices also decided that Trump could go back to the start of the legal process and raise further arguments against handing over his files. It's funny the way that rich people are allowed to just constantly muck up with the system and cheat until it works for them, until it works out for them. Like, that's basically what this is about, right? Like, anybody else would have been like, nope, you're guilty. But this court was like, no, you're guilty, but you're welcome to try again and prove that you're not, and waste even more time and get away with murder for a longer period of time. Like, whatever, who cares? And so it all happened again. That effectively allowed Trump to force prosecutors to jump over an entirely different set of hurdles. And finally, 3 months after Vance ran through that second obstacle course, and over a month after Trump's presidency ended, the Supreme Court said it had no further objections. The decision means Trump's longtime accounting firm, Mazars, will have to turn over 8 years of tax returns and other records. Vance hasn't clearly explained the focus of his probe, but he's told the Supreme Court that it's justified based on public reporting on possible financial misconduct at the Trump Organization dating back to at least 2005. His investigation has shown signs of accelerating since Trump lost his bid for re-election in November. In December, Vance's team subpoenaed records relating to Trump's Seven Springs property in Westchester County. Lawyers who work for the local towns of Newcastle and North Castle told Vice News. This month, Vance hired a new special assistant district attorney with extensive white-collar investigative experience named Mark Pomerantz, and reportedly assigned him to work on the investigation of the Trump family business. Pomerantz is the real deal, tweeted Andrew Weissman, who served as a top member of former special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation into Trump's links to Russia, but hasn't been directly involved in the Vance probe. This would not be happening if there were not there. Wiseman wrote. Whatever that means. And that's the last of that article. All right, moving on. If a stranger offers you a student loan forgiveness, hang up. This seems like an important thing to discuss. All right, here we go. This is a story by Anna Helhosky of NerdWallet and also of the Associated Press on February 22nd, 2021. Student loan scammers have a brand new hook: Biden student loan forgiveness or stimulus forgiveness. Behind the pitch is the same old fraudster playbook, one that persuades federal student loan borrowers to pay for services they could get for free or to share personal account information in exchange for forgiveness. The extended pause on federal student loan payments and revived talk in Congress of debt forgiveness make such deceptions easier to believe. Debt relief scams proliferate when there is a large amount of financial suffering or a lot of confusion, and we have both going on right now, says Persis Yu, a staff attorney at the National Consumer Law Center and director of its Student Loan Borrower Assistance Program. To be clear, there is no new broad-based loan forgiveness program available beyond the existing, often difficult-to-get options such as a public service loan forgiveness or borrower defense to repayment. There's also no application or fee necessary to receive the federal student loan payment pause that's been in effect since March 13, 2020. It will continue through September 30th, 2021. About that stimulus forgiveness. It's safe to dismiss any out-of-the-blue offer to discharge debt, consolidate loans, or alter your repayment plan as a scam. There isn't a person or entity on the planet who can get you a better deal on your student loan or access a program that you can't get yourself by working directly with your servicer, says Betsy Mayotte, president and founder of the Institute of Student Loan Advisors. Mayotte says she's seen an uptick in complaints from borrowers about Biden relief and COVID-19 relief student loan scams. In one instance, a borrower sent Mayotte the transcript of a fraudulent voicemail making an enticing offer. It looks like your student loan has been flagged ineligible for the recent stimulus forgiveness. Oh, no, not ineligible. Eligible for the recent stimulus forgiveness and relief legislation. However, your application needs to be completed. The caller sounded legit. She provided a name and an agent ID number and expressed urgency to talk back on a dedicated eligibility line. Then the caller further emphasized time sensitivity, saying the discharge would be first come, first serve. What's interesting is that this number came in as a DC number, which I'm sure just adds credibility to their scam, Mayotte says. Followers should continue to be on guard as student loan scams proliferate, largely due to the whole whack-a-mole effect. As soon as one company is shut down, another pops up in its place, says Michelle Grajales, staff attorney with the Federal Trade Commission's Bureau of Consumer Protection.
Red flags to watch out for.
The maxim, if it sounds too good to be true, it is, goes hand in hand with spotting scams. But the most effective ones often mix fact and fiction, Gray Hales said. Tactics like using of the moment phrases or claiming to work for the federal government make false promises more appealing to financially vulnerable people. They've heard something about loan forgiveness, Grajales said. They've heard something about the CARES Act. Scammers try to sound legitimate by throwing in words that are very much in the public ear. The basic structure of student loan scams has remained the same for years, Yu says. Companies promise some kind of forgiveness in a short period of time, charge and pocket a large upfront fee, then get access to a borrower's account to consolidate their debt and enroll them in an income-driven repayment plan. If they even do something with the debt, that's what they tend to do, or they just take the borrower's money, Yu says. Experts say it's critical to avoid handing over cash up front, or your federal student aid identification information, or FSA ID, which allows fraudsters to act on your behalf. What they're doing is inserting themselves between you and your servicer, says Scott Buchanan, executive director of the Student Loan Servicing Alliance. Oftentimes, they'll change your mailing address, email address, so all the servicer communication will go to these scam artists. Then, when they don't do what they're supposed to do, you won't know until it's too late. Use caution if a company expresses urgency to apply now or offers to provide a service you could do yourself, such as enrolling in income-driven repayment or applying for public service loan forgiveness. When in doubt, contact your servicer directly using a phone number on its website, not a number given to you by a third party. What to do if you've been scammed?
What to do if you've been scammed?
There's like mid subheadlines. Anyway, if you were conned, remember that you're not the first student loan borrower who's been a victim to predatory tactics. It has nothing to do with how smart you are. It kind of does. It has more to do with how good they are at their swindle and how vulnerable you are at the time that they reach you. That too is true. Like, I have been vulnerable, and I feel like I am only smart now because I have learned from it being done to me so many times in the past. Like, it's happened so often that you get used to seeing the I honestly, like, I can tell the signs almost instantly. Especially like because I mean this sort of thing is everywhere, and I experience stuff like this constantly on dating apps. Is my thing. I would get fake people trying to scam me on dating apps, and that would be all the matches I would ever get. And I got to the point where I would be able to tell within like 2 messages. It'd just be like, "Hi, I like that thing too." And it's like, okay, yeah, you're a bot. Get out of here. uh, but like because they would be using generic, obvious copy paste. Anyway, whatever. It's hard to describe. It's more feeling that I have developed, perhaps. So maybe they're right that it has nothing to do with whether or not you're smart. Regaining control of your account is the most important first step to take if it happens. Experts say here's how. Sever old ties with the scammers. Contact your servicer to report the account breach. You may need to request a new FSA ID. Check the contact information on your account to make sure all ongoing correspondence goes to you. Contact your bank to stop any automatic payments to the scammer. Freeze your credit. Seek legal assistance for help recovering any money. Report the scam to enforcement agencies.
How to complain about a scam.
I don't think I need any more of this. But you can check that out if you are a victim of a scam. Just remember, be careful. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. Ask a lot of questions. If they don't like you asking questions, and if like you asking questions upsets them, then it is probably a scam. I remember when I was trying to become a writer, back before I started writing novels, I was if you look on my web, if you've been following me, as hopefully some of you are, you would see that I at the bottom of my posts on my Patreon, I sometimes post scripts. I've recently started calling them legacy scripts. And so, but I wrote a bunch of screenplays and a teleplay, and then I wrote my first book, Suburban Fantasy, and then I took a break from that. I think I wrote a couple more scripts, but then I wrote a bunch of comic book scripts as well. And one of those comic book scripts actually got picked up or tried to get picked up by someone. Someone really liked my pitch and tried to buy my idea. And I remember it very clearly because they seemed a little like the way they were talking was weird, and they didn't want me to have an agent, and they were trying to like rush the signing or whatever, rush the paperwork. And I was new to the whole thing, and I was saying like, look, I'm new to this. I have a lot of questions. I don't just want to rush through this. I want to like talk about it. What are we doing? Like let's work this through slow. And it seems like in certain ways you're trying to confuse me with weird words. Like let's make sure this will make sense. And the more I was asking questions, the more they got frustrated to the point where they're like, well, you ruined a perfectly good opportunity, and you could have been a famous writer and got everything you ever wanted, but instead you had to ask too many questions, and look at you, fucking stupid guy, ruined his awesome chance at being awesome, and you could have made so much money, and you ruined it. Now you'll never be a famous writer. We're gonna make sure everyone in Hollywood and everyone everywhere knows that you're the worst writer ever. And they like blocked my email, so I couldn't even respond and be like, what the fuck? When I tried to send a response to that, it just bounced and they had blocked my email. Um, and I mean, obviously they were a scammer. They had to. First off, the company that was doing, I'd never heard of them before. I didn't recognize any of the franchises or titles that they claimed to publish. And I mean, I know everything basically, so that's immediately a red flag for me. And yeah, and it was just a red flag. They were trying to push me. It was a red flag. They tripped out the moment I started asking too many questions. But then what's really fucked up is that maybe like 3 years later, I get a random email from one of them in the company, and they're just like, "Remember that loser Andrew Geczy? Remember how he asked too many questions and ruined his chances of a great opportunity? We still laugh at how awful he is, and and we've been ruining his chances of ever getting in the industry again." It's like, is this true? Have they actually been fucking over my chances? Because I have had nothing but shitty luck for a long time now. On top of that, and like the email seemed like what happened, like it was sent out to the company and somehow ended up going to me too. I don't know how that managed. Maybe like somehow. Anyway, I don't know how they did that, but it was horrible and insulting. And I tried to report them. I don't know if anything ever happened with that. I don't even remember what they were called now. But like it's insane. And so like that shit is everywhere. Wherever there are vulnerable people, desperate people, people who are having a hard time, there's going to be people trying to take advantage of them. Constantly, always, and forever. And it's awful and it's shitty, and I hope that those guys are full of shit because it really sucks that I can't make it as a writer. I've tried again and again. The story that they wanted to buy is actually next month's book. So I'm finally going to adapt that story from a comic book idea into a novel idea. And that's literally next month, and I'm super excited for that. I've been sitting on this story for a while, just like Adrift Homeless and things like that were stories I've been sitting on for a while when I started writing those. So when I started writing those, I had been sitting on those stories since high school. And then now that I'm going to start writing this, I'm calling it, I believe the tentative title is Royals, but we'll see where it goes from there. But I'm starting to write this now when I had come up with it around the time I started writing those books. So yeah. So I'm excited. It's gonna be different. I'm hoping it'll be good. Wow, that would be different. All right, moving on from there. What else do we got in the news? Chip shortage may threaten PlayStation 5 supplies at Christmas. As to the last article, I just even though it's not necessarily news, I thought it was important information that might actually save people's lives in a sense. So I felt important to discuss it. I hope you guys enjoyed that last article. Moving on from there to an Ars Technica story that I find very interesting, and I believe there's a part 2 to this story that is the next thing on the list. But for now, chip shortage may threaten PlayStation 5 supplies at Christmas. This is a story by Tim Bradshaw of the Financial Times, though it's also posted on Ars Technica. The global semiconductor shortage is threatening to I didn't give the date, did I? On February 23rd, 2021, sorry. The global semiconductor shortage is threatening to constrain PlayStation 5 supplies throughout the rest of this year, even as Sony's gaming chief insisted the company would be able to produce decent numbers of its new console in the second half of 2021. The PS5 is one of the most sought-after tech products in recent months, with shipments selling out as soon as they reached stores when the console was launched in November last year. Coronavirus lockdowns have only added to gamers' demand for the latest consoles and software, fueling what are expected to be record profits for Sony's gaming division in the financial year to March. So Sony upgraded its gaming unit's annual revenue forecast earlier this month, primarily thanks to improving sales of game software services and accessories. But the excuse me, but the broader surge in demand for electronic components from the automotive industry to smartphones over the past year has collided with pandemic-related disruption to semiconductor manufacturing. Analysts, that was the best version of saying the word, expect the chip industry will take many more months to recover. Jim Ryan, President and Chief Executive of Sony Interactive Entertainment, said he expected the continuing PS5 supply limitations to ease incrementally throughout 2021, but he refused to guarantee that there would be enough to meet demand by the next holiday season. It will get better every month throughout 2021, he said. The pace of the improvement in the supply chain will gather throughout the course of the year. So by the time we get to the second half of 2021, we're going to be seeing really decent numbers indeed. But he added, there are very few magic wands that can be waved. Okay. Ryan reiterated Sony's aspiration to sell more PS5 consoles in 2021 than the 40.9 million unit sales of its predecessor, the PlayStation 4, in its first 12 months. Earlier this month, Sony said it had sold 4.5 million PS5s in November and December. That compares to the 26 million Nintendo Switch consoles sold in 2020, according to Ampere Analysis, which also estimates Microsoft sold about 2.8 of its latest Xbox Series XS in the final 2 months of last year. While far from weak, both Sony and Microsoft will rue their inability to produce more consoles to cater for strong demand, said Piers Harding Rolls, analyst at Ampere. Ben Bajarin, analyst at Creative Strategies, forecasts that the semiconductor slowdown will linger into 2022. For them to catch up, demand has to slow down. He said, I don't see any end in sight. I probably would rather get an Xbox Series X first. I do know I recently put notifications down on that to let me know when they came back in stock, and I didn't get anything for like a month. And suddenly I got a couple notifications letting me know that the Xbox Series X was in stock for a little bit, but I don't have the money for it right now, so that's fun and sucks. Alas. Moving on. Ryan's comments came as Sony revealed plans to launch a new virtual reality headset to connect to the PS5 after the previous PlayStation VR sold more than 5 million units. Although Sony maintains that PSVR sales exceeded its expectations, virtual reality products have generally sold poorly, especially compared to the high hopes that followed Facebook's $2 billion acquisition of Oculus VR in 2014. That is a lot of money spent on Oculus VR, dude. That is a not wise amount of money to spend on Oculus VR. More recently, there have been signs of renewed growth. Facebook reported strong sales of its latest headset, I bet not $2 billion worth. Oculus Quest 2 over the Christmas holidays. Apple is reported to be preparing a mixed reality device for a launch that could come as soon as next year. Ryan provided few details on the new PlayStation headset specifications or launch date, other than to say it would be tethered with a single cable to the PS5. Cool. To really provide for a VR experience that PS5 owners will be happy with, that does require the system to be tethered, he said, hinting at a high-end system with rich graphics. That approach contrasts with Oculus, which now focuses on standalone self-contained headsets, even if that means compromising on graphical fidelity. Oculus ended development of its PC-connected Rift product line last year. Obviously, the technology has moved on since the first PlayStation VR headset, and we will capture that, said Ryan. As long as the Move controllers are a lot better, that's all I care about. Moving on from there to part 2 of this story, also with Ars Technica. Biden administration, I think it means, not some Biden admin of a forum for Biden. Biden administration plans executive order to address chip shortage woes. So basically, read that. Biden read that article too, because he says this. This is a story by Kate Cox on February 24th, 2021. See how that's written correctly? See, Vice? That's how you write a date. All right. The White House is launching an effort today to ease the global semiconductor supply crunch affecting a wide array of other industries. But any boost the administration can provide is likely to be on the far side of many more months of shortages, because they're just now starting to look into this. So relax. Patience. President Joe Biden plans to sign an executive order this afternoon aiming at securing America's critical supply chains. The order will address several challenges in the U.S. supply chain, according to a fact sheet from the White House, with a particular focus on pharmaceuticals, mineral resources, semiconductors, and large-capacity batteries. Remember, semiconductors is the issue with the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. The order is a sort of combination of every US politician's favorite rallying cry: more American jobs! And an acknowledgement that shortages and production challenges in critical supply chains really have had a profound effect on the nation, especially in the past year. It calls for an immediate 100-day review that will identify near-term steps the administration can take, including with Congress, to identify where the vulnerabilities in these supply chains are and what regulators or legislators can do to increase U.S. manufacturing of these critical components. So basically, they're saying, hey, wait a second, are you telling us that there are all these things that we need, all these supply shortages of things that we usually import from where they're being manufactured in other countries, but we could totally be improving these supply shortages and fixing them ourselves by creating manufacturing jobs, and then that would bring jobs to America, and it would help solve the issue of these supply shortages. And like a win-win situation here. Why aren't we doing this? We should at least look into this. That's what Biden is saying, and I think that's actually really smart. And I'm surprised nobody else thought of doing that sooner. In addition to the short-term review, the order also calls for a year-long examination of risks and vulnerabilities in 6 other U.S. technology supply chains: defense, public health, information technology and communications, energy, transportation, and agricultural tech. While the order is framed in practical terms, there is, of course, a political component as well. According to a draft version CNBC obtained last week, the executive order does not mention any other nation, such as China, by name. Instead, it specifically seeks to review places where the supply chain interacts with nations that are likely to become unfriendly or unstable. Interesting. Like China. Silicon woes. The silicon chip shortage is indeed tied to the pandemic. According to industry group research, automotive demand dropped early in the pandemic as people stopped going anywhere, but demand for other uses, such as devices used for virtual learning or telemedicine, went up. As every demand pattern around the world went topsy-turvy, the industry has struggled to keep up. The shortages are beginning to affect all kinds of products. PC graphics cards are legendarily in short supply, and wafer shortages are a contributing factor. Companies are also expressing concerns that shortages will affect the availability of gaming consoles and smartphones in the near future. In both the US and worldwide, the auto industry is hit particularly hard at the moment. Several automakers have had to slow or halt production at their factories due to a lack of chips put in new cars. The Biden administration hopes to help increase supply in the long run, in part of increasing US manufacturing capacity. Over the years, we have underinvested in semiconductor production, hurting our innovative edge, while other countries have learned from our example and increased their investments in the industry, the White House said. Building resilient supply chains will protect the United States from facing shortages of critical products. It will also facilitate needed investments to maintain America's competitive edge and strengthen U.S. national security. I mean, this is all really smart. Like, really smart. Industry data backs up Biden's point, showing that while the US has the highest percentage of market share for chips, a little under half of all sales globally go to US-based firms. The vast majority of actual manufacturing takes place in Asia and is expected to continue to do so. About 79% of chips were made in Asia in 2019. According to Semiconductor Industry Association report, by 2025, that number is projected to rise to about 82%. Only 10 to 12% of chip manufacturing takes place inside the US. So I'll repeat that last thing because I said that really fast. Only 10 to 12% of chip manufacturing takes place inside the US. Interesting. So, Biden has heard everyone complaining about how they can't get their favorite video game consoles. And he said, hey, why aren't we manufacturing more of those parts here in America where we need jobs? We should do that. And it's a good idea. And I approve. And Biden is a smart cookie. Good job. Well done. It's similar to the criticisms Canada is getting for not having an infrastructure for creating its own vaccine. It doesn't have any vaccine infrastructure labs or whatever, and so we have mostly had to rely on getting vaccines from others. And a lot of especially liberal critics have complained that as a first world nation we should be better, and that liberals are bringing us down. Blah 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 blah. Conservative bullshit. But I mean, it's not completely all bullshit. You know, not everything they say always is wrong. You know, like, and not everything liberals do is always perfect. And I think it's cool what Biden is doing here. And I would love to see other liberals and the liberal party as a whole make choices like this more in the future. This is what I'm talking about for thinking outside the box. Like, in my opinion, the answers to our economy and our debt woes and our, especially our national debt, our federal debt that U.S. and Canada both have an equal federal debt to China. The answer to these things, in my opinion, is thinking outside the box. It's coming up with these ideas to do things differently, to try something new. We're not going to find answers in the same old anymore. And so I like that Biden's trying to think outside the box, and I think that's a good idea. Moving on from there, we've got 2 more stories left. Democrats ask Biden to give up his unilateral power to launch nukes, which is fascinating because this is just the sort of thing that conservatives would scream and yell about if we were trying to do this to one of their presidents. But we're doing it to one of our own, so this is interesting. Haunted by Trump, House Democrats sent a letter to Biden asking the new president to give up some of his nuclear powers. This is by a story by Matthew Gault on Vice.com on February 24th. House Democrats sent a letter to President Joe Biden on February 22nd urging the commander-in-chief to give up his ability to unilaterally launch a nuclear weapon. Vesting one person with this authority entails real risks, the letter said. Past presidents threatened to attack other countries with nuclear weapons or exhibited behavior that caused other officials to express concern about the president's judgment. 31 House Democrats signed the letter, including Ted Lieu and Ilhan Omar. The letter also offered 4 alternatives to vesting the sole power to launch a nuclear weapon in the office of the president. It proposed allowing the vice president and speaker of the House to concur with the launch order. That's what I was thinking. As I was reading those first couple paragraphs, is that shouldn't it be like the Speaker of the House, and maybe if the Speaker of the House is not the opposition, then maybe the opposition leader as well. Like, I feel like making it a vote would be bad because it's quite possible that the decision will have to be made quickly. I think is why it's being done as it is right now. But so getting it, maybe having the decision be between 3 people who have to all agree. Vice President Speaker of the House is a good idea, except I would be concerned if those were all of the same party. I think you would want at least one opposition party leader to be to have one of the keys. Be that in this case, would that be Mitch McConnell or what's that one guy, Andrew McCarthy, I think, the guy whose job it was to decide whether or not Green should get kicked out. He was like, nah, she's good. One of them should probably have it as well, and then it should be between those 3 or 4 people. Another proposal suggests that the president seek approval from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Attorney General. The third suggestion will put power in congressional hands and force the president to seek its approval. The fourth, which the third one sounds like the one that I feel like they would want to avoid the most. The fourth would have the most far-reaching consequences, creating a permanent active council of congressional leaders that would regularly participate in deliberations with the executive branch on vital national security issues and mandate some portion of the council to be consulted before the first use of nuclear weapons. None of these proposals address the core issue. The United States and much of the world relies on the threat of nuclear Armageddon to keep the peace, a doctrine known as mutual assured destruction, or MAD. These solutions add more steps to a system that's already ludicrous and buys into the idea that America's nuclear rivals, but primarily Russia, what's China? Chopped liver? Might one day launch a nuclear attack that requires immediate retaliation. Any of the things that letter suggests would be better than the current situation, Jeffrey Lewis, director of the East Asian Non-Proliferation Project at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies, that was a really long name, told Motherboard on the phone, because the old thinking was that the election is a safeguard. We no longer believe that. According to Lewis, the Trump presidency made people pay attention to nuclear weapons in a way he hasn't since the Cold War. In the early days of his campaign and presidency, people used the threat of Trump launching a nuclear weapon as an allegory for his unfitness for office. Trump had a radicalizing effect on people, Lewis said. In the past, people would say the president has sole authority to launch nuclear weapons and there's nothing anyone can do to stop it. It sounds sort of crazy, but what president would ever do that? After Trump, you can no longer say that Trump was an unnerving glimpse of the national psyche. Lewis said that any of the letter's proposed solutions would be better than our current system, but that the whole thing is still based on a false premise of nuclear deterrence. They're still accepting the idea that there may be scenarios where it would make sense to give the president only a few minutes to decide on the large-scale use of nuclear weapons, he said. And I reject that. I think that's a psychotic mindset that got us into trouble in the first place. America's reliance on nuclear weapons as the foundation of its national security problem runs the risk of one day destroying the planet. We are prepared to run all these insane risks, giving Donald Trump the ability to just pick up a phone and do it in order to guard against the extreme scenario where the Russians decide to hit us with everything they've got. he said. They're still conceding that the organizing principle of our forces should be the prompt use of nuclear weapons in a dire scenario. As long as you have that mindset, all the things you do to protect that are like having a loaded gun laying around in your living room. It's a tough... Because on the other hand, are you trying to say that if the U.S. didn't have nukes, and when Russia nuke and the U.S.'s diplomacy was at its lowest, that Russia wouldn't just blink an eye at bombing the shit, like bombing away the U.S. until they were nothing but a smoldering... Like, what is this? I feel like this person is forgetting that the Cold War existed, or is... I don't know. I don't know if I agree with this necessarily, some of this. The best deterrence against nuclear attack is to own nukes, but on a long enough timeline, something will go wrong. We have to be honest about the nature of the bargain we're making, Lewis said, which is that we are deterring these incredibly destructive conflicts at the price of running an awful risk. We're buying time, but it isn't going to work forever, and so what do we choose to do with this time? I think we should use this time to reduce these risks and find a way to transition to a different basis for our security. Well, there's always the Jewish space lasers. Moving on to the last story of the week. This is a very short story. Tiger Woods suffers multiple leg injuries due to a car crash. Remains in surgery. He's kind of a dick anyway, so who cares? But if you are a Tiger Woods fan, sorry to say he probably will not be playing golf this year. Posted on February 23rd, 2021. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department says there was no evidence of impairment when officers arrived on the scene of the crash that injured golf legend Tiger Woods on Tuesday. Woods was alone in the SUV when it crashed into a raised median, crossed two oncoming lanes, and rolled several times, authorities said at a news conference. Holy shit. So it didn't hit any other cars? It literally just bounced off a median and then fucking lost it? How fast was it going to so easily lose control? The 45-year-old was alert and able to communicate as firefighters pried open the front windshield to get him out. The airbags went off and the inside of the vehicle stayed basically intact, and that gave him a cushion to survive the crash. Los Angeles County Sheriff Alex Villanueva said. Both of his legs were seriously injured, County Fire Chief Daryl Osby said. They said there was no immediate evidence that Woods was impaired. Authorities said they checked for any odor of alcohol or other signs he was under the influence of a substance and found none. They didn't say how fast he was driving, but it sounds that you would think that would have to be the thing, right? The crash happened on a sweeping downhill stretch of a two-lane road through upscale Los Angeles suburbs. Sheriff's Deputy Carlos Gonzalez, who was the first to get to the wreck, said he sometimes catches people topping 80 miles per hour in the 45-mile-per-hour zone, and crashes are common. Well, maybe you guys shouldn't go so much over the speed limit, because this is what fucking happens. I will say that it's very fortunate that Mr. Woods was able to come out of this alive, Gonzalez said. No shit. When the deputy arrived, a neighbor told him the driver was still in the vehicle. Gonzalez said he poked his head through a hole in the windshield and saw Woods with his seatbelt on. The deputy asked Woods questions, including what day it was and where he was. Tiger was able to speak to me lucidly, Gonzalez said. Woods appeared incredibly calm, the deputy said, likely because he was in shock. I don't know, I felt shock. I felt very opposite of calm. A KABC TV helicopter over the scene of Woods' accident showed a car on its side with the front end heavily damaged. Airbags appeared to be deployed. The wreckage appeared to be just off the side of the road on a hillside. It's pictures of that if you're watching the video. Interesting. There's a lot more information here than there was before. Before it was like a 4-paragraph article, but they updated it. The cause of the crash is still under investigation. Woods was in Los Angeles over the weekend as the tournament host of the Genesis Invitational at Riviera, where, what? Woods was in Los Angeles over the weekend. I think it's supposed to say at the tournament. Oh, no, he was the tournament host of the Genesis Invitational at Riviera, where he presented the trophy. He was to spend Monday and Tuesday filming with Discovery-owned Gulf TV, with whom he has an endorsement contract. One tweet on Monday showed him in a cart smiling with David Spade. According to Golf Digest, also owned by Discovery, the TV shoot was on course lessons to celebrities such as Spade and Dwayne Wade. He did not play. The 15-time major champion last played December 20th in the PNC Championship with his 11-year-old son, Charlie. He had a 5th surgery on his back, a microdiscectomy, 2 days before Christmas, and gave no indication. So he just had back surgery, and now both his legs are horribly broken. This poor guy. But at the same time, he did it to himself. So, ha ha. The Masters tournament is April 8th to 11th, and when asked if he would be there during the CBS telecast, Woods replied, "God, I hope so." This is the third time Woods has been involved in a car investigation. The most notorious was the early morning after Thanksgiving in 2009 when his SUV ran over a fire hydrant and hit a tree. You think he would learn? That was the start of shocking revelations that he had been cheating on his wife with multiple women. Fuck learning. You think he would stop driving at this point? Like, just get a professional driver, dude. Woods lost major corporate sponsorship, went to a rehabilitation clinic in Mississippi, and did not return to golf for 5 months. 5 whole months? That's almost longer than how long Pokemon ended when they gave a bunch of kids seizures. That was the start of shocking revelations that he had been cheating on his. Nope, I already read that. In May 2017, Florida police found him asleep behind the wheel of a car parked awkwardly on the side of the road. He was arrested on a DUI charge and said later he had an unexpected reaction to prescription medicine for his back pain. Woods later pleaded guilty to reckless driving and checked into a clinic to get help with prescription medication and a sleep disorder. Yeah, get a professional driver, dude. You just have bad luck on the road. And that's all the news stories this week. I hope you enjoyed all that. Moving on to the Geekly Weekly blog. What happened this week? Not much. I guess I just keep trying to shake myself of this funk, and it hasn't been going great. Though I've started getting better at waking up at a reasonable time, which is one thing. We'll see if I can keep that up. I woke up before my 8 a.m. alarm yesterday morning when I wrote this. It was great. That's definitely a step in the right direction. It's really hard being productive when you wake up at 11 a.m. Today, on the other hand, though, I woke up at like 8:45, and then I was so tired I went back to sleep. I woke up at 10:45. So that's not it's inconsistent. My work on that is inconsistent. Anyway, Blizzard announced Burning Crusade Classic, so I logged back into my character for the first time in weeks. The community only seemed more toxic than ever, and I started thinking, between the constantly toxic and bullying community to me never finding a guild that accepts me for me, I'm considering switching servers. There has to be a warm, welcoming community out there somewhere. I just need to find it. I looked into character transfers, but they cost money, and I'm super poor right now. I got food, I have enough for my rent, but basically not a cent more. Gotta love being poor. Even then, I have better things to spend money on than server transfers. Maybe if someone made a case for a different server being better, I'd consider it once I have money again. Alternatively, I can just make a new character once the new races drop. The question is, where? What server is going to have a community that's going to be chill and not toxic and shitty? I hate it. February 23rd ended up not being as big a day as I'd hoped. Star Wars was cool. Oh no, like what? Disney Star was cool. Disney Plus Star was cool. Superman Lois was fine. But the Hitman 3 Elusive Target was revealed in the menu on the 23rd, but didn't actually open till 8 a.m. This morning. So, as of now, it should be up, and that is the second thing I'll be doing after I watch WandaVision. Cool. But yeah, so I got all excited last week that February 23rd was going to be a hell of a day, and it was fine, but I ended up spending half the day just watching nonsense things on Disney Star, and then the other half the day being depressed, and then I watched Superman Lois, and it was fine. Moving on from there to the Geekly Weekly comments, questions, and stats. My podcast is on all sorts of different networks, and I wasn't sure of the stats I was getting from my podcast hosts, because my podcast host, let me show you what I'm talking about if you're watching the video. This is what the thing looks like when I go to my podcast hosts page. See, yesterday I only had 2 visits, but I had 153 downloads and 0 plays. Fun. I don't want to know about my rankings. Where's the old stat thing? They had a stats. Maybe this would be the old one. Nope, not at all. But yeah, so my stats are all over the place on Podomatic, which is my podcast host. But I don't think that includes it also sends out the RSS feed to all these other podcasts directories, such as Apple iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all Spotify, all the major ones, even Stitcher. But Stitcher is one of the ones where it's like every time I go there, it's just nothing. No one's ever touched my podcast. I don't know how many people are on Stitcher, but apparently no one has ever had any interest in me at all. Because see, nothing, no stats, no nothing, never was anything. One person once listened to one of my Geekly Weeklies once. That's it. Who knows why? Wasn't for very long, clearly. Absolutely insane. I don't know why, but that's Stitcher. So we know that it's getting nothing there. But recently, Apple iTunes now allows you to look at the stats for just Apple iTunes. And so my stats for just Apple iTunes are as follows. I've been viewed by 13 total machines ever in my life, which is years, for an average of 29 minutes per unique machine. So out of 13 machines, people have listened to 29, for a total of 8 hours. So for a total of 13 machines, they've listened to 8 hours of stuff, which is approximately 29 minutes per unique machine. Cool. So that's wonderful. So out of years and years and years, literally, my stats everywhere are as bad as I was expecting them to be, and the Podomatic stuff I can't trust to be real. I don't think, because I mean I'm getting all these downloads but no plays, and I do think that because if these stats don't include the Apple stats, then what that means is that it's possible that downloads can be separate from plays. Like I was under the impression, like, well, what if somebody, say for instance, downloads a podcast on Apple iTunes and then plays it? Would that count under downloads or plays? Would it count as both? Apparently, it would count as neither, because I don't think this is including the iTunes stats. But that would then mean that downloads would not include plays, because I think if you download from Podomatic directly, it only downloads as a direct MP3 file. So they would have no way to know whether or not you played it or not. So that gives me hope that all these thousands and thousands of downloads that I'm constantly seeing that never seem to lead anywhere might actually be people listening and enjoying my stuff. If that's true, I wish to God they would just say something, because I feel so alone. And basically what I said. So what does this mean? Pretty much what I already knew. I have no audience to speak of that I can tell. It's very exciting that I'm doing this for literally no reason at all. It's not benefiting anyone. It provides zero value, which is a great feeling. Did I mention in the blog that I've been depressed? Anyway, my name is Andrew Geczy. My brand is 99% Geek, found at 99geek.ca. I'm a writer writing monthly chapters of novels like episodes of TV shows, releasing them in 4 weekly parts, a teaser and 3 acts on Sundays on my Patreon page at patreon.com/99geek. At the end of the month, finished chapters added to the PDFs attached at the bottom of every post. Finally, the finished books are self-published on Amazon. And by the way, all this spiel is going to change next week with the beginning of the new phase 3. So you can all look forward to that. There's urban fantasy tales about a teenage girl turned into a vampire against her will, or a scorned lover investigating paranormal phenomena, or a journalist covering news and politics in the Middle East. There's a sci-fi story about people on a dying world trying to build a ship to a new one. There's a fantasy story about a fallen angel trying to stop the end of the world. And there's more coming. And it's all attached at the bottom of every post on the site in convenient PDF format, readable on computers, tablets, ebook readers, and phones. I also have a Geekly weekly blog and host video game playthroughs and matchmaking streams on Twitch, and eventually post on my YouTube and Patreon pages. Still stay tuned and subscribe. It's only $1, and the support you show will go a very long way, I promise. There are also higher tiers. Give $5 one month, and you can name a character or location, or suggest a thing you might want to see. Basically, you get to give a noun, and then I promise to incorporate that noun into one of my stories somehow. Maybe not the same month you give the suggestion, but within one cycle of books guaranteed. No matter how crazy, you can't sabotage me. I promise. And you can keep giving nouns for every month you pay at the $5 tier. Or if you give $10, you don't get 2 nouns, but you can give a description. Describe the personality of your character, or the look of your location, or the importance of your item. For $10, you get a noun and a description. You can also give $1 towards supporting my video game efforts at video game streaming, or my weekly blog. If you don't want to subscribe on Patreon, you can also give at paypal.me/99geek for a limited time. The same rules about suggesting and not applied there. You can write it below your contribution. For the time being, anyone who gives at paypal.me/99geek, it will go towards my podcast feed, which I'm worried I might have to cut off. Like I might have to only have, say, 10 episodes up at a time, which is going to suck. And I think that's just something I'm going to have to do. What else was I going to say? Starting next week is phase 3 of 99% Geek. A bunch of things are changing. I'm gonna kind of go through everything and give it a once over. I'm gonna try to fix a bunch of stuff and give everything a new makeover and see how that goes for a little bit. So if you want to give any advice on how you want to see things changed, you've got a week left to do that. Hurry it up. I would love to hear from you. I'd love to get advice and criticisms. I would love to hear people just showing support. I'd love to hear if you appreciate the news updates I'm giving, if you appreciate the predictions, if it's helping you keep up to date with your friends and stuff or whatever. If you feel like you're benefiting from this podcast, it would mean a lot to me to hear from you. so I wouldn't feel like I'm just wasting all my time. Anyway, this has been me talking about stuff, and I hope you enjoyed it. I'm as poor as a kid, living paycheck to paycheck, and sometimes starving. So I understand if you are too. I don't want to take food out of your mouth, so your attention is enough. Say something, comment here at the very least. Follow me on Twitter at Andrew Geczy. That's AndrewGeczy. That would be great. I would love for my followers to go up on Twitter. As high as possible would be great. That's my main social media platform. Or Instagram, WingCommander4, at WingCommander4. That's WingCommanderIV. Or email me at aldon@gmail.com, aldonn@gmail.com. Live long and prosper. May the force be with you. Long live Marceline the Vampire Queen. We are the 99% Geek.